essentially Metal, if you're not reading it, is about Batman's discovery, or the Justice League's discovery of this dark multiverse. It's this place, this vast oceanic realm beneath the known universe where all of our hopes and fears exist in material form. And this villain from down there sort of collects Batman's worst fears about himself and then brings them here as this invading army.
Well, let me ask, and I'm going to lean into issue 4 in a minute, but thus far, what are some panels or moments in this story up until now, halftime report, that really sums up this series for you?
Well, I think when Batman pulls Baby Darkseid out of the bag in issue 2, in issue 2, everybody is chasing Batman around because he supposedly stole the most powerful weapon in the universe. And in a story that I love called Darkseid WIRE that Jeff Johns did, he sort of contracted Darkseid into a little baby. And so no one has picked that character up, and I was like, that's perfect, because he would want to use Darkseid as a weapon against this terrible evil in the dark multiverse, and it would be the perfect thing. I would be remiss if I didn't mention getting to write Daniel Dream of the Endless, that Neil Gaiman gave us permission to incorporate this character that has meant so much to me. The whole mythology of Dream and Sandman, the series, has meant so much to me for so many years. And when I wrote Neil and said, listen, this story is largely about this new realm that sort of encompasses all of our hopes and fears, our dreams and our nightmares, and so there would be kind of a permeable membrane near it that is the dreaming. And I wrote this long explanation and a lot of caveats about I'll show you everything and anything, even if I can use them for one panel and da-da-da. And Neil just wrote back, he was like, I love it, go for it. And it was the nicest response. And he's been wonderful about being encouraging and, looking at our ideas, all of it. Batman, Baby Darkseid, I think Justice League Voltron was one of my favorites. Batman riding a dinosaur was one of my favorites. But the deal we made was that we were gonna try and make it feel like the greatest rock concert, of DC characters that you could be invited to, and that it just went on and on. There was one showstopper after another, and it was meant as a thank you to our fans, and also a kind of invitation to take these characters farther and thrash out in ways that you wouldn't expect with them. So it's just been a real joy. Greg and I and everybody on the team for Metal have just been blown away by the response. I mean, we really kind of went into a cave and we're like, we're gonna make something that we love that sort of is in the spirit of Kirby and Frazetta, and just if anyone likes it, great, and if nobody likes it, we're cool with it, we love it. And the fact that it's done as well as it has, and that the one-shots have sold out and all that stuff, and people are cosplaying it, it really means the world to us. So we completely are humbled and overwhelmed by the response. So very, very grateful as well. So everybody's in the band, you're all welcome backstage. We intensely appreciate all the support on it.
So you've already been seeing Metal cosplayers?
Oh yeah, the Batman Who Laughs seems to be the one that everybody loves. He's sort of the favorite. Seems to be this fear that he has of what if Batman killed the Joker and finally did him in after all these kind of terrible things that Joker has done over the years. And the Joker's heart had this toxin in it that essentially was released once he was dead to make whoever killed him the next Joker. And so Batman becomes this horrifying Jokerized figure. Right. It's easily the most fun I've ever had in comics, and it's an event that's meant to celebrate the past in a big way and say, look at all this great classic sort of giant space opera kind of storytelling that's been done at DC in the past, and let's use that as a foundation to go new places. Rebirth was such a success for us because it sort of connected us, I think, to our history and to our legacy. And now, I feel like now that that's kind of settled, it's time for us to use that sort of keystone and that groundwork to be able to explore new territory. So that's why we wanted to create a new area of the multiverse, the dark multiverse, new characters, the Dark Knights, the evil Batman, new villains, new heroes, all of this. And so it's sort of a kind of, I guess, an omen of what's coming at DC. It's sort of a torch we're trying to carry forward into 2018, this sense of showing how big and crazy and wild the DC universe can be.
With this title, having lived with this character for so long, with this series, with Metal, how has it impacted your love of Batman or made you view this character differently?
Oh, it makes me love him even more, because when you see his vulnerabilities, I think, it just makes him even more endearing. When you write Batman, it's paralyzingly intimidating. I mean, it still is, but especially when you start, because you get this, this job, and you go there, you sit down to write the blank page, and you write panel 1, the Batcave, and it's just suddenly all those stories that you loved as a kid, even the TV shows, Adam West and Michael Keaton, and just everything just hits you, and you're like, I can't do this, and Alfred is sitting there kind of like, come on, sir, we have to do this, you know? You know, the more that you start to, I had Grant Morrison actually is the one that started telling me you have to write him like a creator-owned character. You have to write him as though you made him up and pour your own fears and anxieties and hopes into this character and show why you love him. And in that way, it gets baked into the DNA. And ultimately, I think what happens is what you're describing, where you finally write something like Metal, at least for me, that explores all of his weaknesses, all the things he's afraid of, and it only makes him stronger at the end to kind of acknowledge those things and move past them. But it makes you love him even more. Because at the end of the day, as large as he is, and as kind of, you know, oversized and as heroic and gigantic and iconic and folk, you know, heroic, he's still technically, as a fictional character, a human being.
Well, you've created this concept of the dark multiverse.
Right.
That's you've added something very big and very new to canon. Does it feel a little bit like you're carving out a little bit of legacy? You already have an established legacy. You and Greg Capullo are considered one of the best teams, creator teams on Batman. It is a fact.
Thank you.
And now you've added this concept of the dark multiverse. Does this feel like a little bit like a legacy? And are you kind of excited for the future for other people to play in this sandbox?
Well, you're always excited for people to pick up the things that you make and then use them. I mean, the way that Court of Owls has been picked up, and our version of the Joker, and Duke, who's the Signal now at DC, all that stuff is really, there's no greater compliment, nothing more inspiring. But I think, you know, when you're doing it, you don't think of it that way. You just think of what's the story I'd like to pick up and read today. And now I'm at a point, having done Batman for a while and a little bit of Superman and now multiple characters, the Justice League on Metal, I just feel such enthusiasm and exuberance for the DCU, and these pieces are suddenly accessible. Everything from Dr. Fate to, you know, Cheetah, and that sense of having all of these beautiful characters kind of at your disposal is so enthralling. I mean, so the things that I want to do coming up post-Metal, and Metal ends with some crazy stuff, I promise. It's easily the most crazy, insane, wild issue I've ever written. Except I would say it rivals, there's an issue right before 6 that I did with Grant Morrison, The Wild Hunt, that stars like Detective Chimp and the Bureau of Animal Investigators and Metal Man and Red Tornado. That one is like definitely neck and neck crazy with this one. But with 6, I mean, the things that happen at the end are pretty bold, you know, and definitely rewrite a lot of sort of mythology of the DCU. And I think ultimately this year I really fell in love again, going back and looking at a lot of Kirby and a lot of sort of seminal stories that I loved as a child, both at Marvel and DC. I studied a lot of events, you know, and a lot of big stories from Infinity Gauntlet to Blackest Night, all over the place, and, you know, Crisis on Infinite Earths, and those stories, what I realized they have in common is that they're daring, and they're not afraid to redo creation myths. They're not afraid to say, this is where we thought the boundaries of our imagination were when it came to this universe, and then pushing past it, saying there's a fourth world, and there's a source wall, and there's a presence, and all of this crazy stuff, you know, and then saying, what's beyond that? Well, let's try, let's go there. And if I fall down and fail on those things, that's fine. I'd rather go out swinging for those fences than not. So those are lessons that I feel like I'm very grateful to have learned from Grant and from Neil Gaiman, who was very helpful on this event as well. And even Frank Miller, talking to him friend to friend, you know, that they always say you go bold and you take the risk and you try. And
so you did mention Detective Chimp.
I did.
So Detective Chimp, Plastic Man, which is actually Plastic Egg right now.
He's an egg.
And Dr. Fate, Carter Hall, Hawkman, Superman, Wonder Woman. Who are the other characters that, yeah, this is a Batman arc, but you get to play with a lot of different characters. Who's really been one that you've enjoyed writing the most?
I loved writing Hawkman. I loved writing Carter Hall just because I love the fact that he's a detective of history, and he's this hero that sort of is reincarnated over and over and over and has this mantle, I think, and this burden of knowing so much about sort of human progress, human failings. That he's been around since the very beginnings of humanity. And so he's seen the scope of sort of our greatest ambitions and our biggest failures. And so he's also connected to these kind of wild alien elements. And so there's almost this great secret history to him and his character. I loved writing, The Batman Who Laughs was my favorite new creation to write in many ways because he's so dark. He's almost like, I loved writing Joker for so many years, but Joker is chaotic and he has a plan, but it's very emotional and it's very, The Batman Who Laughs is Bruce Wayne. So he has these layers upon layers of plans that are very cold and calculating, and so he's really terrifying in that regard. And we just took all these risks, Darkseid Baby and all this kind of crazy stuff that we loved, and they let us do it. And the fact that fans have responded the way they have with, midnight rock band release parties and pizza and all that kind of stuff, I mean, if there's any way we can pay them back. I mean, when 6 comes out, I'm gonna buy pizzas for a bunch of stores and do midnight parties and all of that, just as a thank you, because it's been the greatest experience of my life, work-wise, this series. The fact that, you can take those risks and just go nuts with your love of the characters and try to sort of push it into that kind of galactic crazy. And not only will fans follow you, but they'll embrace it to the degree that they have. It really is inspiring. It says a lot about the community that they're willing to go with you places you never thought.